So is that all the stories? I just reminded myself that I'm the
No,
there's more.
There's more. I have a quick one because this involves our friend John Dehlin. So I thought this was important to talk about because again, and I'll go through this quickly. Everybody
is John Dehlin wearing women's garments again?
That's it. That's the story. So we can stop now. No, totally kidding. Do not clip that soundbite. No, I've been talking about the tank top garment because I think I very early on saw the fire that would be ignited from this in post-Mormons, in faithful Mormons everywhere. And again, I'm going to put out my theory that the church never intended for this. They were just going to release slip, half slip, tank top garment in African countries where it's more conducive to their dress and the converts there. They were never going to make a big deal of it. And I think I've talked to some marketing people who are like, yeah, it has all the earmarks of something that was accidentally released. And then they had to kind of backpedal on it. But now it has found its way into the New York Times. What are garments? What are they about? What have they been? What are they now? What do women think? This is a big deal. And this article in the New York Times was picked up by other newspapers. So this is everywhere. I can't even tell you what a big deal this is as far as Mormonism goes and the garment and kind of saying things out loud, right? Revealing the undergarment. So it was also reprinted in the Salt Lake Tribune. And I think it's interesting because if you look back here, it says Mormon women, right? But what have they changed it to in the Salt Lake Tribune? Women, Latter-day Saint women. So they made that little tweak right there, which I thought was interesting. But our friend, John Dehlin, is quoted in the New York Times article. They talked to him about it because I would say he has his finger on the pulse of what Mormons or LDS women and post-LDS women are thinking because he's done a lot of research, done a lot of scholarship, done a lot of studies, and just talked to people. So in the New York Times, it says, John Dehlin, the host of the podcast Mormon Stories, said he had interviewed hundreds of women, both practicing and former members of the faith. I would say close to all of them expressed significant discomfort, if not aversion to wearing garments, he said. The women said the garment made them feel frumpy, contributed to body shame or negativity, affected their sex life and their partners. And it says the church seems to be listening and many young women are thrilled. And I will
say that John Dehlin right there is being appropriately quoted as an expert on the subject because of his podcast and all the women he's interviewed.
Exactly. And it clearly says his statements are based on the women that he has interviewed, the research that he has done. And I can corroborate that because I spend a lot of time on faithful social media and and I've been called on this, faithful women say, these are hard to deal with, right? I know it's hard for everyone to hear, but yes, faithful women come forward and ask for help from other faithful women on social media saying, how do you deal with this? Infections or heat rash or just, uncomfortable. So it's a real thing. But anyway, so then what happened is in the Deseret News, there is an opinion piece. I need to be clear. I misstated. I said article a couple times. Yes. And it makes a difference that it is an opinion piece. Right. So this is somebody's opinion who has come out and kind of given John Dehlin some heat for daring to weigh in on this, which I think is funny. The headline of the article, can you read that little thing down on the left-hand side of RFM? It's too small. Like I put this together at the end. This is hilarious to me.
I'm sorry, on the left-hand side?
Yeah, underneath the headline, the sacred undergarment. See that little square under there?
Online, the title of the Des News opinion piece, not an article, this does matter. Okay, is maybe male critics are not experts on religious women's underclothing. So that was the headline for the opinion piece in the Deseret News. Yeah. Maybe male critics are not experts on religious women's underclothing. Boy, it sounds like the headline is all about John Dehlin, doesn't it?
Yeah, the headline is all about John Dehlin, but the person is saying men shouldn't weigh in. I'm like, well, men are the ones that stuffed us into these garments in the first place. So what an ironic statement. So yes, that is the title. Can you read the title one more time, RFM, and then I'll get into what it says.
Yes, what it says is maybe church leaders are not experts on religious women's underclothing. That's what it should say.
That's what it should say, but what does it
really maybe male critics are not experts on religious women's underclothing.
Right. Male critics. And they are talking about John Dehlin and his comments in the New York Times. So it says, again, opinion piece, garments are probably not in the New York Times because they're inherently interesting, but as part of the continuing discussion about the place of institutions and religious authority in our lives. To that end, John Dehlin, a former member whose podcast criticisms of the church is asked to weigh in on Latter-day Saint women's feelings. I would say here again, asked to weigh in on Latter-day Saint women's feelings. That doesn't sound like scholarly research that John does. It just sounds like he's trying to speak for women, right? I take exception to that. He says, I would say close to all of them express significant discomfort, if not aversion to wearing garments. Okay?
And what is not put in this opinion piece is his basis for making that statement.
Yep. They never mentioned based on interviews, based on scholarship, based on surveys, based on research. No, they make it sound like he's just making that blanket statement without anything to back it up. This seems a bit like asking Martin Luther how Catholics feel about the Pope. Unless there's something compelling reason to believe Dehlin's ongoing criticism of the institutional church is not coloring his perception of how its members feel, sourcing him here is mind-bogglingly weird. It is not mind-bogglingly, if you can say that, weird. He is an authoritative source through, as we mentioned, his research and his degree and his interviewing for the last, how many decades. So I just think it's interesting that this opinion tries to throw him under the bus where his statement is based on, who he is and his research.
It is. But ultimately, the unstated conclusion that they're trying to throw on you is the Mormon women love their freaking garments. They got no problems with the garments.
Yep. Nope.
In fact, they hate the fact that now there's got tank top garments because there's less garments for them to love.
But again, this is why garments have caught fire, because faithful women are weighing in saying, oh, thank God, I've always hated them. Post-Mormons are going, wait, what now? It's a huge firestorm. And I just very quickly wanted to show you how much social media is talking about garments in all kinds of different ways. Everybody's wondering, are there going to be short sleeveless wedding dresses? I found one. Here it is in the wild. Outside of the temple, it is sleeveless. And she is married. She's standing outside. She looks beautiful, but it is a sleeveless. It's nothing like I had to wear where you had a, down to up to, nothing like that. Now, however, I did look in the church handbook, and I'll try to be quick here, but it definitely says that inside the temple, you have to wear something that looks like a temple dress, meaning sleeves. You're not going to be wearing your sleeveless wedding dress in the temple. And in fact, if you do happen to show up with something that doesn't have the appropriate sleeve, have you ever heard of this? A woman's bridal modesty jacket.
It looks like a bolero.
Yeah, it does look like a bolero. It has little buttons and long sleeves. So for those who are saying, and they're saying it all over the place, the garment was never about modesty. Don't even get me started on that. Here's your bridal modesty jacket if you show up in the temple with a wedding dress that has no sleeves. Here is a camp list I came across. Like I said, garments in the news everywhere, where they, let's see, I think is that too small for me to read? Do you want to read that circled area of what they're supposed to bring to camp here?
Can you read that, Bill? And also, did you have something you wanted to say earlier?
Oh, I don't remember what it was. It's okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm over talking, trying to get that.
No, we're good. So pants must cover knee, shirts must cover belly and shoulders, no tank tops. Swimsuit must completely cover your body.
No, wait.
I
Come
don't know
on.
what that is.
What kind of swimsuit is that?
I don't know.
A very
We're going back,
tight-fitting wetsuit.
110 years to the beach.
I remember
Coney
now,
Island?
by the way, if women loved their garments so much, then why in the hell do they change them so often? Joseph F. Smith was the one, I think, who originally put the battle up and said, no, we're not changing that stuff.
Yep.
And
They were going to.
they've been changed 1,000 times since. So somebody's not happy.
No, and again, these modesty standards for girls at camp do not apply to their moms. Their moms can wear tank tops. Their moms can wear.
Okay, let me try and be charitable as much as I can, okay? Because I think that by body they must mean torso.
Yeah,
right?
I'm sure that they mean a one-piece swimsuit. I'm sure what they mean. But I just think it's interesting that the standards for the moms are now different for the teens, because moms can wear tank tops. Moms can wear pretty short skirts, as we've seen on some of the influencers, but the teenagers can't. So that's going to be an interesting fight between mother and daughter, right? Mom, you're wearing a tank top. You're not. Until you wear garments, then you can wear a tank top. Anyway, it just is getting crazy. And I thought, how are people learning about garments? How are they figuring out? You've got them in the New York Times. You've got Secret Lives of Mormon Wives openly discussing garments. One character, Jen, wears them. She was upset last season that she'd forgotten them when she went to Chippendales. Yeah, I'm not making this up. But look at this here. 1 billion downloads of, or viewing of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. I just had to do some stats on conference. You got 789 that watched on YouTube when you add up all the sessions. You got 98,000-ish that attended in person. You got like 890,000 that viewed conference. And of course, it'll continue to be viewed and used, but there's no way that it's going to get to 1 billion. So this is where people are getting their information. Places like the New York Times and Secret Lives from Mormon Wives.
Well, so it's not even up to 1 million watching it on conference.
No, not even up to 1 million.
But
No.
1 billion, which is 1,000 million, have already watched about garments on Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. This is where they're getting their information about Mormonism. It's not from conference. So, and again, if you do the stats on number of active members that they claim, over 17 million, how many there watched it, like 5%. So there's something wrong there. Anyway, another thing I thought was funny, again, the gaslighting has begun. This person on social media said it was never a rule that you had to wear garments outside of the temple. Once you're married, it was just a toxic cultural thing. And I'm hoping that we're breaking down these toxic expectations. Yeah. I don't even think I need to make a comment on that. However, I did include this picture because I'll tell a very brief story from college. When I was in college and I was running with the same boyfriend that was sick, he was wearing shorts like that, right? It was the early 80s. It was okay. We were out running. I was wearing running tights. And the next Sunday, the bishop asked to talk to us. And I thought, oh, okay, interesting. Are we going to get a calling or what's going to happen? He goes, I saw you guys out running. And I saw that you, talking to my boyfriend, who is a returned missionary, did not have your garments on, but you were wearing dolphin shorts, right? So to try to, and he read him the riot act. You should be wearing your garments. You should not be wearing dolphin shorts.
When you're running?
Yeah, when you're running. This is what I'm saying. Now, maybe you shouldn't be wearing dolphin shorts. That's a whole different story. But it's a real thing. I don't even know what dolphin
shorts are. Do you know what dolphin shorts are, Bill?
Don't you see those? You grew up. You're older than I am. You know it. You probably had a pair. You don't remember these?
I did not know anything about dolphins.
I just find it hard to believe that you wouldn't have worn these in PE.
I'm not saying I didn't wear them. I'm just saying I never heard about dolphin shorts. By the way, as faithful as I was, I did not, nor did I think it would be appropriate to wear my garments in ballet class.
That's right. But you do have that story about the professor that knew you were LDS because you had 2 shirts on. So yeah. Anyway, just this idea, everybody keep a watch out. People are starting to say, no one ever tells you to wear your garments. You just did that on your own. So this is just heating up everywhere with all kinds of different opinions, and people are basically making stuff up. It's kind of crazy. All right. One last thing here. And I know Bill had touched on this before, but if you want to get rid of your garments, right, it's a problem. My parents used to cut the marks out and fry them up in the frying pan until they were cinders and then throw those away. Yeah, exactly.
That's good eating.
That thing right there that I just said probably explains why I podcast. But then you have the fabric, right? Sometimes it's just bags laying in your closet forever. Celestial Recycling. You sign up, you can get a bag, large size, $40. Price goes down from there. You stuff your garments in them. They have to be clean, not bloody. Makes that clear, or soiled. You send them in. They never open the bags, but they shred them.
Well, how do they know if they're bloody?
They just trust you. I have no idea.
They shouldn't be trusting me.
They said the bag will never be open.
This is not a joke. This is a real thing.
This is real. And it was in the paper again this week. I know that we had touched on it a month ago, but it was in the paper again. And so they promise they will never open the bag once it's been sealed by your hands. So those marks will never be seen by human eyes again. And then they are shredded commercially. And then a fine pulp results from that. And then that's used as fuel at a cement factory. So it's eco-friendly and you can get rid of your garments that way. So you don't have to worry about cutting out marks, frying in the frying pan, whatever it is that you do. So anyway, interesting.
How much does this cost? Because I may give these people a call.
Yeah. Like I said, the large bags are $40 and then it goes down from there. You drop them off at a location, or if you're not near a location, you mail it in at your own expense. And it's called Celestial Recycling.
So they're going to have people who are just trying to cram these bags just so full, they're going to break the zippers and everything, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, it's a pretty innovative idea. And a lot of people say they can't believe the church hasn't come up with this already, like a recycling center. You take it back to a distribution center. But getting rid of garments, you see this post on social media all the time. Oh, I just came across a bag in the back of my closet. It's kind of cathartic for people to just not worry about how they throw them away. So anyway, I will continue to talk about garments because, it's kind of a spotlight shown on all craziness of Mormonism. So I think that's all I have about garments.